Hi, in this video, I'm going to describe a simple middleware framework that uses the Salesforce PubSub API and platform events. I'm going to walk you through a basic approach with toy middleware. For more details, you can see the blog post and the GitHub repo, both of which are linked in the description to this video. So first, a bit about the motivation. Why use the PubSub API and platform events? Well, there are a lot of good reasons. Asynchronous communication, decoupling, scalability, etc. But actually, in a recent client project, the motivation for using PubSub API was something different. For security reasons, this client hosted their middleware on an Azure VPN where inbound internet traffic was prohibited. No ports could be opened to allow inbound REST calls from Salesforce. As a result, our initial design, which had Salesforce making REST calls to the middleware, was not viable. So instead, we transitioned to an architecture using PubSub API, whereby the middleware would call Salesforce, establish an HTTP connection over which bidirectional gRPC communication could happen, and the middleware could subscribe to platform events that happened on the Salesforce API. Once these events were received by the middleware, they could be transformed and calls could be made out to other systems in order to facilitate business workflows or whatever, the usual stuff that you do with middleware. To demonstrate how the Salesforce PubSub API works for this blog post, I created toy middleware along with a Salesforce testing harness that generates platform events. And you can check out the code in the demo PubSub repository linked in the description to this video. So if we look at the code, let's start on the Salesforce side first. I've defined a trigger on orders, and the trigger sends a platform event whenever a new order is activated. And you can see the order event itself is constructed, actually we call it the order activated event, is constructed here, and it simply contains the order ID, status, effective date, and the account ID. We're going to send this over to the middleware so that whatever we need to know about the order can be looked up from there using REST calls based on the order ID. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see once the events are created, we publish them using something called the order event publisher. That's just a wrapper for the event bus, and we can go see what that looks like over here. If events are not null or not empty, we publish them on the event bus using the publish command. Very simple. As I said, just a toy example here. So next, let's head over and look at the client side. Inside the middleware, we have we're using a package which provides an implementation of the client side of the PubSub API. It's this TypeScript. It's called the Salesforce PubSub API client. You can link to that in the blog post as well. And you can see here we connect to Salesforce by constructing a client and passing in things like an access token, the instance URL, and the organization ID. So this stuff is passed in from the test harness, which forks this middleware as a child process. So if we head over to the GitHub workflows, we'll see there's one called integration tests, and it spins up this test middleware integration TypeScript that runs the tests, and we just pass in the credentials for Salesforce to that. So this test middleware integration is really what the test harness is, and it does a bunch of things that we need to test out this PubSub architecture. So first of all, it starts up the middleware and it forks that. That's the PubSub middleware that we were just looking at over here that defines the client and then connects to receive the messages. So what else does it do? If we continue scrolling down, you'll see that when it receives messages from the middleware, it's going to print them out to the console. Keep going down and see that it actually also runs the Salesforce side of it. So it's spawning a process here that uses the Salesforce CLI to publish some test events in Salesforce, and then actually what it's going to do is running the test itself. It simply it knows to expect 3 events. It checks for them, and then if they're received, it exits successfully. Otherwise, it tells you you've got an error. Yeah, so that's a quick overview of this test harness, and we can run it locally using Act, which is a tool that allows us to run workflows, GitHub workflows locally using Docker. So I'll just spin that up here in the terminal and let's see what happens. So it's creating a Scratch org, installing the Salesforce software to generate the test events on the Salesforce side. And now it's installing the toy middleware on Docker. So the logging gets a little confusing because you've got multiple processes running, but here you can see the middleware is reporting that it received an event. And if we look at the what the event looks like, it has a replay ID. It has some metadata here that's specific to the PubSub API, things like a replay ID and a unique ID for the transaction. But the payload you'll recognize is what we sent over from Salesforce as the platform event. We've got the account ID, an effective date. We've got the order ID here and the status. So that is pretty much it. The middleware just logs this to the console, and then once all 3 events have been received and confirmed, it exits. So yeah, you can find more details, as I said, in the blog post, and this code is in a public repo. Links to both are in the description.